Did you listen to Jeff and Professor Hamo in the morning? Here's what you missed.
We love to discuss and interview folks and get you guys tuned into what's going on. And there's a gentleman all the way from
Cameroon.
the Cameroon.
Nakumbuka the legal bet song.
Yes.
Eto. The generation ya football.
Samuel Eto'o.
Walikuwa na umeshika.
Cameroon. Cameroon. So when we talk about climate change and socio-economic development, I mean, it may be a tough subject, but listen to this man.
Yes.
Who, by the way, is a PhD from Nottingham University and has also undertaken Harvard University's executive program in climate change and energy. And he's written a book called Making Africa Work Through the Power of Innovative Volunteerism. I'll say it again. Making Africa Work Through the Power of Innovative
Volunteerism.
How, Paul?
Yes?
You said it like a real professor.
I told you. This is our idea.
Dr. Richard Munang. Welcome to Hot 96.
Thank you.
Look at that, man. Ni professor kama wewe.
Unasikia?
Simuongeze.
Hana vitu mingi.
Ana PhD kama wewe.
Ndio tumeanza. We're just taking over.
So tell
This
us.
is professorial talk.
By the way, doctor, you recently won a UN award, right? Tell us about that for your work. Tell us.
Thank you very much, Jeff and team. The award that I won with the UN Environment was the Baobab Award on Program Innovation, which is pretty much on how can you be able to make climate change relevant to the common Wananchi, to the Mamambugas in villages, to decongest the topic so that it can be understood by each and everyone, and to make everyone be part of the solution and engage in such a way that they can be able to see value in addressing climate change aspect, because the topic sometimes is abstract.
Absolutely, and there are a lot of people who still believe that climate change does not exist, that global warming does not exist.
It's a myth.
Including the president of the most powerful nation on the planet.
Yes. Tweeting away.
And tweeting away saying climate change is a myth. What do you say, Rich? Is it a myth?
Well, the changing climate is no longer an abstract issue. If you look at the droughts in the Horn of Africa, they are testament to the fact that the climate change, though is discussed like a long-distance issue, has moved to the present. So the crop failures, the drought, the floods in DRC, all across the continent, it's not even looking further to see whether it is changing or not. So we are already living with a changing climate, and what we need to do now is not talking about whether it is happening or not, is what can we do about it. And there are a lot of things that are already happening. For example, if you look at mothers in villages who used to plant maize, the crop failure is visible to each and everyone. And now is how can we be able to make sure that they can also diversify and start doing other things that can put more money in their pockets. And that is the discussion that actually needs to take forefront.
Yeah. Are people discuss, when you talk about innovative volunteerism, what does that mean?
Very simple. If you look at Africa today, over 1.2 billion citizens, and over about 65% of that population youthful. So we're talking about 720 million youth across the entire continent today. If you look at each and every one, we do have talents. We do have skills. You don't need to have a PhD to be able to contribute, to do something. But sometimes, if you look at the continent today, the focus has been on material resources. It's been on physical resources rather than on what each and everyone can be able to bring on board, their skills, their talents, their networks, their ongoing initiatives. So the idea is, if you are able to use your skills and talents to contribute to something useful, you'll be solving a big problem, but at the same time creating wealth for yourself. So using this approach of engaging each and everyone to bring what he or she have is an opportunity to be able to address challenges without necessarily having to focus only on what money can do, because we outweigh money, and with collective effort we can be able to do a lot of things.
Absolutely. We're going to talk more about that. Take a quick break. It's 17 minutes past the hour, 9 o'clock. We're in the studio live with Dr. Richard Munang, all the way from Cameroon. He's just written a book called Making Africa Work Through the Power of Innovative Volunteerism. What a title. What a title. He says, while Africa has long been referred to as the dark continent, it has shown itself to be a bearer of light to the world. We're going to get your Twitter handles, your social media handles in a little while, but we're decongesting the book Making Africa Work through the Power of Innovative Volunteerism. It's a profound message. He says Africa's development not about money, but optimally engaging its sovereign capital, its people. Listen in, Robert Mgendi says, listen in. And then Field Marshal Kim chimes in and says, we cannot make Africa work while we are our own enemies. What do you say, Dr. Munang? What do you say?
The logic is very simple, that togetherness is our strength. And as the African proverb goes, cross a river in a crowd and the crocodiles won't eat you. That means only collectively can we be able to address Africa's challenges. And the logic is that if we embrace selflessness and shun selfishness, if we embrace collectivism and shun individualism, if we can banish hopelessness and embrace hopefulness, we can truly ensure that Africa rise. Because if you look in the past 15 years or so, 15 billion have been injected into the continent to address food insecurity.
15 billion
US dollars. And there are certain things that we should never ever get used to. Abnormal can never become normal. And food insecurity is an abnormal situation. What that means is that the problem of food security cannot be solved by an individual. The problem of food security needs each and everyone on board. And therefore, what we need to do is to know that regardless of what each and how we look like, of our religious affiliation, of creed, of professional affiliation, it doesn't really matter. Each and every individual have something to offer. And that individual needs to be on board. And that is why this logic of innovative volunteerism is that, because if you don't volunteer for something useful, you will definitely volunteer for something useless.
Absolutely.
And you must be able then to know that the maker gave each and everyone talent, skills, and we are all endowed with the capacity and the capability to be able to do something. So believing that and seeing that each and everyone have something to offer is truly the way that we can be able to drive Africa's transformation.
Yeah, but let's face it, Doctor. The majority on the continent are under the age of what? Between the age of 18 and 35. 3 quarters. 700 plus million. And yet many of them don't see an opportunity in the continent. Many of them want to jump on a boat, cross the Mediterranean. Half of them will sink in that sea and nobody cares. Others will end up in refugee camps across in Europe just for the sake of what? Getting to Europe? Why all the hopelessness?
And is it a problem of the leadership or is it the environment here?
Right. What is it?
Because tonight people are leaving and the Chinese are coming in. What are they seeing that we are not seeing?
Thank you.
The problem is very simple. The simplistic way to put this is that if you look at the youth, they've not been made to believe that they are actually the solutions that the continent needs. They're the constituents that can drive Africa's development. But if you look at the world today, Africa is actually, it's not just the engine that will drive the entire global development, but it's also the frontier that will actually be the envy of the world. If you look at agribusiness in 12 years from today, $1 trillion US agro-economy is here. That is how you will then start to look that if we were to expand the entire agro value chain, we can create up to about 17 million jobs every year for the youth. But as we're speaking today, as you rightly said, 12 million of them are getting into the labor market and competing with less than 3 million jobs. And they have not been made to understand that if you are able to bring your skill on board and you can connect it with another person's skill, you can actually address the challenges. That is the reason why they're leaving. But the solution is very simple. Right here in Kenya, through this spirit of innovative volunteerism, youth with marketing skills, youth with skills in information communication technology, youth with skills in clean energy, have come together and they have actually formed what is called Ebago Pamoja Africa. And the simple idea that they're using with innovative volunteerism, they didn't have money up front. They've come with these skills and they're identifying clean energy vendors, solar dryers, and connecting with farmers in rural areas so that they can be able to add value to what they're producing. Farmers dealing with tomato, farmers dealing with fish, so they can dry that and connecting them so that they can be able to get it at affordable financing. And as a result of that, they're putting money in their pocket and solving a problem. So the point here is that challenges provide opportunities, because someone's challenges provide an opportunity to another. And addressing that challenge is the only way that you can be able to create wealth for yourself. This aspect of innovative volunteerism, therefore, is to show that we are the solutions to the problems that Africa faces, and therefore no youth should be able to leave the continent to go elsewhere because it is greener here than elsewhere.
African solutions to African problems. What was that Pamoja thing you just mentioned?
Ebago Pamoja, it is an enterprise that has been created by the youth in Kenya here. And the logic is very simple. The challenges that farmers are facing as a result of post-harvest losses because they cannot access solar dryers actually provides an opportunity that if that farmer is connected to a solar dryer vendor, then that solar dryer vendor will be able to provide a solar dryer to a farmer who will then dry vegetables, or who will then dry fish, or dry tomatoes, and as a result of that be able to speculate even when he or she can sell it because it's already been dried.
Right.
Because the problem of the entire continent, even Kenya is losing 500 million US dollars each and every year as a result of post-harvest losses. That means if you are to reverse 500 million by decentralizing clean energy, which is solar dryers mostly, to these mamambogas in the villages, you will be creating enterprises, creating incomes, and actually more opportunities for the youth. So what needs to happen, because when it comes to the policies, Kenya actually have one of the best energy policy, what is called the feed-in tariff. So if you are to reconcile that with the agricultural policy, what is called the climate smart agriculture policy of Kenya, you will be creating opportunities. But what needs to be done is for the youth to know that the challenges in the agro value chain is where the billions are, and that is where they should be able to tap into. And using the example of Ebago Pamoja that youth have created, they can actually be able to tap into opportunities.
500 million US.
My
That's
goodness.
50 billion shillings.
Correct.
Every year.
Every year.
Lost.
Yes.
Post-harvest losses.
What is happening at the LCPB?
India, Kyunjuri.
My goodness.
Our maize is rotting.
I mean, you've heard that. You've seen
Our
that.
maize is rotting. And by the way, Doctor, on this President's Agenda 4, food security is there. It's amongst the 4. And we have to be able, if you can't feed yourselves or sustain, your agricultural produce, then forget about it.
That's very true. And one problem solved can actually provide a solution to another. If you look at the Big Four of Kenya, which is a brilliant idea to be able to drive development, because development starts from an engine. And the engine of development for Africa is what Africa have in abundance, which is the agricultural sector. And if you compare with South Korea capitalized on its competitive advantage to be able to drive its economic growth to where it is today. And if you compare the economy of South Korea, it's almost 15 times more than the economy of most African countries.
And yet in 1966, when they got independence, we were on par, or I think we were above them. 1966. Carry on.
And actually, Kenya supported South Korea when they suffered a food crisis in 1964 or so, and actually gave them a loan of 10,000 US dollars then.
What?
We were China then.
What that means is that Africa can actually be able to leapfrog to where it can be if few things are done. The first will be, if you take the Big Four, a brilliant concept. There is food security, there's affordable healthcare, there's manufacturing, and there's affordable housing. If you can be able to address food insecurity issues, you'll be putting more money in the pockets of citizens, whereby they can afford affordable housing, whereby if you decentralize clean energy, solar dryers, solar power irrigation, to add value to what is produced, you are actually driving manufacturing. And if you can be able to produce nutritious food, you will be actually preventing people even not to go to hospital, because what you eat matters. And therefore, looking at that from that perspective, you could actually use one stone to kill so many birds.
Right.
And in this case, to be able to do that, focusing in the agro value chain, because agriculture is not just about production, it's about processing. It's about transportation. It's about linkages to market, utilizing information communication technology, which most of the youth are tech savvy now. They can be able to utilize their mobile phones actually to engage the farmers to be connected to markets. And in Kenya, actually, Kenya is the first country on earth to be able to come up with the M-Pesa logic and idea.
Yeah,
and that means that
it's a game changer.
It's a game changer.
Money in the pocket, like you were saying.
Yes.
Absolutely.
But you know what, Doctor, and I'm sorry to cut you off, you are the first person who's actually articulated this Big Four agenda in the most simplistic way, because everybody begins with universal healthcare for all, affordable housing for all. You don't realize that if you start with food security
alone,
and then the ripple effect gives you money in the pocket to health, to eat right. So that means, you wouldn't have to go to the doctor as often. You can afford housing because you have excess, you sold excess produce. And then you can create jobs, which is manufacturing, which is the other.
I mean,
this guy comes all the way from Cameroon to tell us this.
No. We need a professor to bring it down.
A 40-year-old from Cameroon.
In fact, you need to tell us. What is your background? So that you're here. What is your background? So that you inspire someone.
Yes,
this is someone out there.
You have just broken it down for us.
What is your background?
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, I was born in the northwestern part of Cameroon in 1978. And we're a family of 5 siblings, and I went to school without shoes. But my inspiration was that my mom was a farmer, and my dad also a subsistence farmer. But every year we could see that our maize were failing, beans were failing, so we couldn't even have food. And as a result of that, I started to question myself, which kind of solution can be devised to be able to ensure that the challenges that my mom and dad were facing in their farm, which is replicated across the entire continent today, which solution can be found. But because I was brought up in a very poor home, what they used to tell me was that with passion, hard work and dedication, my dreams were valid. And I went to school without shoes, but that did not deter me from studying. But when I finished school, there were no fees to send me to university. And my uncle, as you will see in the book, Pa Tingam, actually borrowed money to send me to the university. But even at the university, I could not stay in a hostel because there was no money to pay. So I was staying with my uncle's friend, trekking kilometers away from the university. But when I finished university, I volunteered for 1 year. And it was actually during this volunteering time that I got the best lessons of my life that actually reshaped my entire career today. So the point is very simple. With dedication, humility, and motivation, with passion, each and everyone can be able to achieve anything on this earth. It is not the level of education that matters, because the volunteering for 1 year was what gave me the experience to be able to win a scholarship to study in Nottingham University in England, and later on went to Harvard University. But the point is very simple. When you volunteer your time, you are not wasting your time, because if you don't volunteer for something useful, you will volunteer for something useless. But when you volunteer, you build skills, and especially for the youth out there, regardless of what you are doing, whether you are a border rider or you are a taxi driver, you are contributing to a bigger solution, because what you do, you are connecting the dots and you are closing gaps. And each and every one of us is important. Each and every one of us is unique. And your uniqueness is not in terms of whether you have achieved a PhD or you've achieved a master's or not, but it's in what you do. Because leadership is inspiration. You should always aim to inspire one another. And these are the lessons that I learned. But the understanding was that there is one thing that each and every African, or even across the entire world, should do, which is to find purpose. And purpose is that thing that you should get up each and every morning thinking that if I was to do this, I'll be solving a problem, not just to benefit me, but to benefit others. So this is the kind of thing that each and everyone should do. But the idea of innovative volunteerism is that the innovativeness of it is tapping opportunities to solve a problem, but in the course of solving that problem, you make more money. If you look at what I said, $500 million US being lost each and every year in Kenya as a result of post-harvest losses. That is a problem, but it is an opportunity.
Absolutely.
And if each and every year 1 million Kenyans are getting into the labor market, but with 1 in every 6 Kenyan unemployed, that then means there is no other way you will create jobs to be able to absorb 1 million Kenyans each and every year getting into the labor market and competing for fewer jobs without looking at the entire agro value chain. But you do not need to understand agriculture to be involved.
Wow.
A skill in marketing
Yes.
means that if, for example, Kenya is importing fish worth 1 billion Kenyan shillings each and every year.
Yeah.
But if a marketer can be able to understand that if fish produced in Kenya can be dried using solar drying, it means you will not be adding to the emissions into the atmosphere. That means you will actually be helping Kenya implement its climate obligations. If that fish is packaged well, utilizing the proper standards, that means that that fish, someone eating it, because people are becoming climate conscious, how is food produced? How is it processed? How is it packaged? Is it safe for my health? And that means that if, as a marketer, as a marketing student, for example, who has nothing to do with agriculture, you can be able to market that from a health perspective, a safety perspective, and more so, also from the perspective that if you are able to purchase that food, you are actually not only going to be healthy, but at the same time, you are going to be also contributing to addressing a problem, because the processes that were taken to produce or package that fish were actually in line with the environment.
It's what I was telling Professor Hamo the other day. I was in Marsabit County, Lake Turkana, right there.
Yes.
Unexploited. And yet there's a wind power project there. Clean energy.
The biggest in Africa.
The biggest wind farm in Africa. I say
the
build
world.
a factory there, fish drying or fish packaging factory, package the fish, sell the fish. I mean, why should
the
we,
world.
why should we import fish from China?
I mean, we are competing with our own selves. This is just not you.
How do you do that?
You're talking to Kijuli. You know. and as you're talking,
Yes.
is it because our politics in Africa depends on the many being poor, so that this one person can be the king?
Yeah.
You know, that is our policy. How do we wrestle ourselves from this and become powerful? As you know, the youth every day wake up every day knowing that money is king.
And
Nothing more, no idea.
And the thieves are out there.
Yes,
The
and
thieves are the politicians.
we champion them every day. Right now, we are in Bunge discussing toilets today and 5-star treatment. How do we wrestle ourselves as the youth to start volunteering our ideas?
The biggest opportunity that Africa have today is that it's got what is called sovereign wealth, which is us, the citizens, which is the youth, 720 million of them.
Yes.
And what we need to all understand is that ideas transform societies. Money upfront kill ideas and bring fights, but ideas can be able to drive and transform society. And there's a joke that is made about Africa most of the times, is that if you want Africans or any African to be distracted, bring money upfront. They will abandon whatever thing they are doing, chase the money, and forget their priorities.
This is true. This is true.
But what needs to be done, especially the youth, because first of all, the Africa of 2018 is not the same like the Africa of the 60s or the 80s or the 90s.
Layer two.
The youth today are tech savvy. Anything happening anywhere in the world, they know. They can connect with someone in New York or in Berlin or in London anytime, utilizing your mobile phone. So the world is pretty much in your palm. That then means that the understanding of issues is not the problem, but it's about priorities. And the priority should be not about you as an individual per se. It should be about what will you want to be remembered for. And you can only be remembered for by solving a problem that is bigger than you. And the biggest problem that Africa faces today is food insecurity. Because if you address food insecurity problems, we are addressing health issues in the continent. If you address food insecurity problems, you actually be addressing the issue of poverty. Because everyone eats food. No one smokes oil. No one smokes other things. But if you address food insecurity, you will be lifting people from the bottom of the pyramid. So the overarching issue here is that the youth, knowing that ideas transform societies, should be able to leverage what each and every one of them have and engage in innovative volunteerism to be able to use their skills to contribute to the bigger picture. but also knowing fully well that if they can be able to do that, they will be building their skills and being competitive, because the world is becoming so competitive.
Yes.
And if someone doesn't prepare himself, and preparing himself is not only through education per se, because education goes beyond the classroom. It's also about nurturing the skills, because we're talking about blockchain, we're talking about robotics, we're talking about artificial intelligence. And that means that people who are not really trying to orientate their skills towards areas that are highly needed will be displaced, and this will be replaced by machines, by robots. And so it is about now the continent, which is youthful, because actually the continent is youth, 720 million is youthful. That means that if Africa works, the beneficiary will be the youth. If Africa fails, then those who will suffer the consequences more will be the youth. So Africa is their continent, and they don't have to talk about, and you see, leadership is not necessarily about being in elective position. Everyone is a leader. And leadership is inspiration. Leadership is taking responsibility. Leadership is accountability. So if you can be able, just take the example of traffic lights. When they are red, whether you are a PhD or you are a primary school leaver or you are the head of it doesn't matter. You have to respect. So that is leadership. But when you run through red lights, what are you showing? What example are you showing? That anyone can run?
It's impunity.
It's impunity.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, don't expect another person not to do it, and don't blame the person. So the point is that everyone should take responsibility in what he or she is doing and be an example. And in this way, if the youth can know that they're all leaders, each and every one of us is a leader, then that leadership should then be translated to what can we then use what we have, which is us, because the biggest blessing that we have is ourselves.
Absolutely. And Kimutai Correo, the tweets are coming in very thick, Doctor. He says, such people as Richard Munang change the face and minds of Africans. Bon travail, Munang. Bon travail. Erastus says, listening to this interview, if all radio stations in Kenya had such morning shows, then we would definitely transform this country to its best. Wow.
And you know this you're talking to a mama boga, and when you're talking to these people and to Africa, there is this fascination about you cannot give ideas without papers, and we need to listen to everyone, like you're saying. How then do we change this narrative? How do we tell people that everybody has a story, everybody has a contribution? It is not about the papers, it is not about your glowing credentials. It is about some gifts that people have that we bring together. What do you say to people?
Very, very important point. If you look at Africa today, the most important thing that needs to be done is that we must reconcile personality with papers. Having papers means nothing unless you can translate what you have understood in those papers into reality. Because the difference between opportunity and reality is action. There are a lot of people who are doing excellent work across the continent today, including Kenya, who have never gone to school. My mom never went to school. My dad never went to school. But they gave me the best inspiration that with hard work, dedication, passion, and humility, you can become anything. And they proved by example, by working in their farms, utilizing that what they could harvest to feed us, sell that to send us to school. What does this mean? Each and every one have a role to play. But the first thing that really needs to be done is that we must respect one another. Respect is very, very important. And these are the lessons that, as you see in the book, in chapter 1 of the book, where at night we were gathered around a fireside. As I was growing up, 6 years old, to be told stories by the elders. And what those stories were teaching us was that you must respect your elders. You must be humble. You must be respectful. And you must, at the same time, be passionate about whatever thing you do. And these are values that sometimes are ignored by society. And unless you embrace those values, which are latent in each and every one, we might not be able to go anywhere. And then back to your question of what can those who have not had the requisite education do. Actually, they play a very crucial role. If you look at the border borders, You look like the taxi men. You look like the matatu drivers. You look like the farmers in villages. If that farmer doesn't produce the food, even the richest person will not be able to have food. So they play a very crucial role in society, and they can never be ignored. If that driver or that border doesn't transport that food from that village to the market, you will not be able to afford it. Because you have the money, you will not even be able to have that food. So the point is that each and every one play a very crucial role. And unless we start to see that by connecting the dots, it's the only way that we can truly drive transformational change. We might not be able to address any developmental challenge in the continent. So each and every one matters.
Absolutely. Folks, remember the name, Dr. Richard Munang. He actually happens to be the Regional Climate Change Coordinator at UNEP, United Nations Environment Program here in Kikiri, and he's written a new book which is available in town. Folks, check it out, Making Africa Work Through the Power of Innovative Volunteerism. Absolutely essential stuff. Dr. Richard Munang, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
40 years old, man. Congratulations. This is definitely what we call
Candid interviews with decision makers. Catch Jeff Koinange and Professor Hamo every day, Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. only on Hot 96.